Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Saray. How are you?
Good, Yashoda. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. I am so pleased to have you on our little group here. Well, it's 1,200 strong, so I wouldn't say it's little.
That's impressive. Wow.
Yeah, it's been wonderful creating this group, and we're trying to get some engagement going around lifestyle medicine, which I know is a passion of yours and of mine. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. So Dr. Saray Stancic is, I'm just going to say code blue. That's probably the best introduction there is out there. But I'm just going to read off because you have such an amazing resume, and I definitely don't want to get it wrong. So, Dr. Stancic is triple board certified in internal medicine, infectious diseases, and lifestyle medicine. She graduated from New Jersey Medical School in 1993, completed her fellowship, and was the chief of infectious diseases at the Hudson Valley VA in New York. And in later years, she served as the translational medical leader at Roche Pharmaceuticals, where she led clinical trials in the field of viral hepatitis. In 2012, Dr. Stancic left her work in infectious diseases to fully dedicate her time to the field of lifestyle medicine. Her interest in lifestyle medicine is rooted in her personal story, which I'm going to have Dr. Stancic go over that for us. And she's the founder of one of the first lifestyle medicine practices in the country, mentors lifestyle medicine interest groups at Rutgers, and seeks to spread the power of lifestyle medicine on a global scale and bring needed change to how we train physicians. And of course, she's the producer and co-creator of the documentary film Code Blue, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know Will Shock You, which was globally released in May of 2020. So, and you're going to be releasing your first book, What's Missing from Medicine, 6 Lifestyle Changes to Overcome Chronic Illness. Yay!
Yes,
I am so looking forward to that.
I'm really excited about it. And we're planning on releasing the book on the 25th anniversary of my diagnosis, which was
My.
11th. So I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I love that you've put together this Facebook group of physicians and healthcare professionals and really serving them in such an important way to spread the power that lies in lifestyle. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So, Saray, I'm going to hand the mic over to you and have you just tell us a little bit about your story, how all of this came about. I never get tired of hearing it, by the way. I've heard it a couple of times at different, conferences, but it's always so inspiring. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the summary of my background. But yes, I'm an infectious disease specialist, and I became such or interested in the field because I was in medical school in Newark, New Jersey in the late 80s, early 90s. And regrettably, that period was coincident with the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And within that experience, I witnessed so much pain and suffering and human loss. I mean, we had 2 wards in Newark that were just AIDS patients. And every one night, we're on call, we would admit easily 2 pneumocystis pneumonias, a CNS toxoplasmosis, and a CMV retinitis. These opportunistic infections were just commonplace. And at the time, we had no antiretrovirals to treat these patients. And we could treat the opportunistic infections and offer them supportive care, but we didn't have treatments, not unlike what we're dealing with today, the COVID pandemic, where we have wards of COVID patients and we have no treatment. We're utilizing supportive measures. So that was really my introduction to medicine as a young medical student, and it made such an impression on me. This was undeniably the field that I wanted to pursue because I wanted to make a difference in that realm. And it is extraordinary. And I'm so proud of the advances we've made in a relatively short period of time. Within the span of my career, we've taken a diagnosis like AIDS, which was a death sentence, to what it is today, a chronic disease that we can largely manage with this armamentarium of antiretrovirals that we've developed in the pharmaceutical realm, which I think is extraordinarily important. But as you know, my career has evolved and taken on a path that I could have, not predicted early on. But as a young woman, and this is largely because of my personal story, that I've become this passionate advocate and practitioner of lifestyle medicine. As a young woman, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. In fact, I was 28 years old and I was on call
Oh, wow.
in the middle of a very busy shift. And I went to bed for a few moments. And when I woke up, I was paged, and I woke up and I found that I couldn't feel my legs.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and that led to obviously an evaluation in the emergency room, an MRI, which confirmed a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis with multiple lesions in both my brain and spinal cord. And so literally everything changed in that moment.
Yeah.
I was no longer that young, healthy physician that I thought I was. I was now a chronic illness patient. And so
Wow.
everything changed in that, all of a sudden there were all these limitations. And I was immediately started on IV steroids to treat that acute exacerbation or initial event. And then once I got through that hospitalization and physical therapy and the introduction of multiple medicines to treat my bladder and my neuropathy, my doctors recommended that I start a disease-modifying therapy. And back in 1995, there was only one drug approved by the FDA, which is a drug called beta-seron, and it was recently approved. So my doctors actually said to me, "It's such a blessing that you've been diagnosed in 1995.
Oh, my goodness.
We have a treatment in that something that would not offer, it doesn't offer a cure, but it offers a slowing of the progression of this chronic, debilitating disorder."
Mm-hmm.
The only problem was that when I started these daily injections, I was, hammered with a side effect profile that, was like something I couldn't tolerate. I mean, daily chills and nausea, vomiting, fatigue. I mean, it was just intolerable.
Mm.
And, and when I went back to my doctor to talk about the side effect profile, he advised me that it was incredibly important that I maintain the disease-modifying therapy. And so the way that we would approach managing this for me would be that I would receive additional medications to treat the side effects.
Right. Wow.
So I found myself within a relatively short period of time, dependent on nearly a dozen drugs, and my quality of life was severely compromised. I would say that within a few years, I was dependent on a cane or a set of crutches. And as I said, I would have regular exacerbations, and it was clear that disease was progressing despite the use of the disease-modifying therapy.
Mm-hmm.
In 2003 is when things changed for me. And I always call this my aha moment. And at this point, I was practicing medicine in New York as the chief of infectious diseases. And by chance, I came across an article that discussed the connection between diet and disease.
Mm-hmm.
And I was struck by this because here I was, an attending physician.
Right.
I knew nothing about nutrition or how it might play a role in disease formation.
Right.
And when I read the literature, I was just, it was incredibly exciting for me because it offered me something that I didn't have, and that was hope.
Right.
And it urged an interest to pursue and learn more and more about this idea of nutrition, and that sort of then snowballed into understanding lifestyle and exercise and stress, and how those important choices that we make every day play a role not only in preventing disease but also in better managing and even reversing disease. And I became more and more empowered. And I went to my physician after really studying a lot of the literature to share with him what I had learned, who, by the way, was, just a brilliant MS expert. Of course, you can envision what he said to me. He didn't really think that there was much value or merit in changing a diet to one that was primarily plant-based, rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, fiber-enriched. He didn't think that was going to make a difference. He thought the most important variable was that I be compliant with the disease-modifying therapy. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that he's a bad doctor. It just means that he was badly trained.
Right. Right.
He's just missing this piece that you and I have come to learn.
Right.
is so critically important.
Right.
And so, thankfully, and I don't even know how, I found it within myself, and maybe with my husband, who's an extraordinary man, has always been so supportive. I convinced myself that despite that advice, that I would forge forward and I would try something different, because I had been compliant for 8 years with what my experts had been advising me to do, and I was struggling.
Mm.
So, empowered with this literature from this doctor, by the way, his name was Roy Swank, who published literature. His first article was published, believe it or not, in 1952.
Oh my!
In the New England Journal of Medicine, and that's really the one that sort of skyrocketed me into wanting to understand more about food. I changed my diet. I started to exercise. Early on in the 1990s, it was thought that exercise could exacerbate or worsen multiple sclerosis. So,
right.
I didn't exercise for 8 years. I was highly deconditioned.
Wow.
So I started out very slowly with a stationary bike, and with my husband's support to get onto it. I began to better manage my stress. I was chief of infectious diseases. I was taking on one clinical study after another, seeing a lot of patients, accepting, additional research opportunities. And I realized that I was taking on too much in the work setting. So I made it clear that I needed to cut back or, better manage the time allotted to my profession.
Right.
And so I made some changes in that capacity. I learned how to sleep. Yashoda, I didn't know how to sleep.
Wow.
I mean,
it's crazy how we are, right? Like in residency and fellowship, we just take such poor care of ourselves that we're like a setup for something like this. So when we're in training, and even as physicians, even to this day, I think we kind of tend to have this idea that we're invincible or something, and that we don't necessarily need to take care of ourselves, and when a lot of times not practicing what we preach. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because that obviously was a big factor in your disease process, right?
For sure. I mean, think about it. At that point in my life, I was a third-year medical resident. I was on call, not sleeping. I was eating really poorly, whatever was in the hospital. Sometimes those machines at the hospital where you can, you know what I'm talking about.
You mean food-like products?
Yeah, I call it food stuff. I wasn't exercising because I just didn't have the time. I wasn't sleeping. I mean, everything that we talk about in the field of lifestyle medicine, we just don't do training. And that's part of the initiative that I'd like to talk about a little bit later, that, this need to bring not only change to the medical education model, the curricula, but also how we train doctors. I mean, we should be training them to be the example, right? So we want doctors that are eating a plant-based diet. We want them to have that time to exercise every day, just like, the physical activity guidelines tell us to meet 150 minutes of physical activity per week. How many medical students are actually doing that? Assuring that they're sleeping effectively. We need to really create significant change in the way we grow and develop young people into active and hopefully happy physicians. I mean, this is an important field. We want physicians that aren't burnt out, and we don't want them depressed. We have very high rates of suicide in our profession, which is, I think, unacceptable. But certainly, I believe I have a genetic predisposition to autoimmunity, multiple sclerosis, but certainly turning on those genes was facilitated by this horrific lifestyle that I was engaged in. And, before we got cut off before, the point that I was trying to make, that when I implemented all of these changes, not only my food, my exercise, my stress, my sleep, when that came together for me, and it's important to make this distinction, that it wasn't just my food, it wasn't just a plant-based diet, it wasn't just exercise, because I think a lot of us maybe are really good at one thing and then we ignore other things. I think it's important for us to take that comprehensive approach and address all aspects of lifestyle. And I think when we do that, we really hit that sweet spot and we get the best of all worlds there. And so what I found was that over time, and I always say this because a lot of my patients will come to me and say, well, I've been doing this for 2 weeks and I'm not better. I mean, this is not something, this is not a fad or something that we do for 2 months in order to lose weight to fit into a dress or to a bathing suit, right? This is something that we commit to for life. This is a
Right.
lifestyle change. It's not a fad. So what I found almost immediately was that one of the things that I noticed with my MS was the very deep-seated fatigue that comes with MS. That veil of fatigue began to lift, and that was like but there was so much more to the MS, like my heavy legs and the numbness and the tingling and the pain that I would experience. That took time before I turned the corner on that. There were a lot of difficult moments that you know, I always share that I ultimately did run a marathon, but it's important to note that the time from when I implemented the changes in my life, that was 2003, to the point that I crossed the finish line at a marathon, that was 2010. That was 7 years later. And, you know, the American way is often to, you know, the quick
fix.
we want it, and we want it now.
Yeah, that, you know, I was going to ask you about that, right? It's such a, and did you ever, like, along your journey, I mean, were you like disbelieving of, you know, Swank's work? Were you ever feeling like, you know, maybe this isn't the right way to go about it? Was it like self-doubts because there was either very slow or almost no progress?
Oh no, it was all self-doubt. I was very, very nervous that I might have made them. I mean, this was, and again, this is before, like, you know, Forks Over Knives or any of the, you know, these communities that have, there was no support back then. Like, I didn't know what lifestyle medicine was. I didn't know what plant-based diets were. This was just my reading, and I can tell you that in 2004, 6 months into my change, I had an exacerbation. And when I went to my doctor, he said, you know, you brought this upon yourself.
Oh boy.
There was a great deal of guilt and did I make the wrong decision? But there is where I think my husband, who's been, again, such an extraordinary support in my life, he said to me, look, you've seen a lot of good things happen in the past 6 months. This is, you know, there have been signs, like I could stay up a little late. I always say I could stay up past Jeopardy because everybody knows. But that's a big deal to stay up past. I mean, I would have to get home from work and I'd pass out. I was so fatigued. So little signs like that I saw value, or there were days that I felt more comfortable walking a distance without a cane, and my husband would see that. So then when that event occurred, when the exacerbation occurred 6 months into the change, that was very difficult. But I knew there was something to this. I had lost some weight. Even my labs were better, like my cholesterol. Although, you know, cholesterol, we don't seem to think that cholesterol is of value or important in MS, but actually there's a paper published that illustrates that cholesterol could be a disease biomarker of disease activity in MS. We know that as cholesterol levels climb, MS outcomes worsen, which is exciting. So what's good for your heart is good for your MS. Wow. So things that I was learning, my doctors who were MS experts were not familiar with that literature, but there it is. It's published, and I'm happy to share with anybody who's interested. But I forged forward despite that exacerbation, and things continued to progress and improve. And as I said, at some point I came to the realization that I could try to do things like run. Things that to me at one point in my life were that's just never going to happen. That's just not an option. And so when I decided to do this with much trepidation, it truly was exciting though. And because I knew that I could do it, but it wasn't going to be something that I could do overnight. And I can tell you that completing that marathon was really one of the highlights in my life, because not because I ran a marathon. That was never something that was on my bucket list, but because it represented that my efforts had borne fruit, that there was truth to this, that there was value in this. And so as I saw how it changed my life, how, I just have all of this energy and all of this passion and all of this gratitude, I said to myself, I can't keep this to myself as a physician, as someone who took an oath to care for communities and others, that I needed to find a way to further this and to bring change to an institution, an educational institution that completely misses this.
Right.
To me,
Right.
that's the extraordinary part. I mean, I had, like I said, amazing, brilliant physicians caring for me. Like, Ivy League trained, like the best of the best, kind, compassionate, empathetic physicians who were unable, despite all of that, unable to give me the one bit of advice that changed the course of my life.
That's crazy. And that's such a simple piece of advice too, like you said. That's not some new drug or, yeah.
So that's why we need to, there's a wonderful quote from Maya Angelou that I often use in my talks, and it's simply this: do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. So we can't blame the past. My doctor, who is, of course, wants the best for me and wants to support me in the best way, he just doesn't know, and by no fault of his own, right? He just wasn't trained. So now that we know, and we have the overwhelming body of evidence in the scientific literature that points to the importance of lifestyle, it's indisputable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now that we have all of this evidence, it's now that we know, if we don't say anything and we remain on the course that we're on today, where we're not medical students, then I think that's unethical.
Totally.
I think it's immoral, and I think it needs to change. And we have to, as a community of physicians and health professionals, we need to speak up to this and ensure that we create change.
Yeah. So you know what, I've sort of been involved in this movement for like a little over 3 years. And, so I'm still kind of new at this. But what I'm seeing, just like tuning into sort of what's going on the media and stuff like that, is there's so much of clashing of, the keto diet works because people lose weight and, their diabetes improves. And it seems like, and this is amongst physicians. We're not even talking about lay people. Right. I mean, like when you take, 1,000 physicians and ask them if they thought a statin was good or bad for somebody who has cardiac disease, 99.99% of them are going to say, absolutely, yes, that's the standard of care. I'm not sure why there is still so much confusion around the nutrition piece. My understanding, even like the Obesity Medical Association, they don't necessarily, they're like, whatever diet works for the patient. There's a sort of this almost like catering to people or allowing, or so that they want to give them the message that they think the patient would like to hear, rather than taking like a really firm stand and saying, we already know this. There's billions of studies. Dr. Greger's nutritionfacts.org is blowing up with, and yet there still seems to be doubt in physicians' minds. And so when there's doubt in physicians' minds, obviously the patients are confused. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit about?
I think it's a great question. I think that we tend to cherry pick data to favor, what our personal beliefs are. I think that's definitely an issue of concern. But I think regardless of the diet, I almost hate to use the word diet, because meaning like when we assign it a diet like, I don't know, the South Beach diet, Atkins diet, the keto diet. When I say diet, I mean just what does your nutrition profile look like? What are the foods that encompass your plate? I think in most cases, a healthy diet, universally, I think most people would agree that a healthy diet includes ample fruits and vegetables. I think most doctors would agree with that. Would you agree? Yes?
Totally, yeah.
Okay. Even the obesity group, they'll say, if you eat fruits and vegetables are good for you. Whole grains in general are good for you. All legumes in general are good for you. I think where the disagreement comes in with dairy and meat and fish, and you know, where how much of that is allowable? Is it allowable? Should we be strictly plant-based? There's so much confusion. Should we be strictly vegan? Should we be primarily plant-based? Should we be plant-centric?
And oil, that's another big thing that comes up, right?
Right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think there are points where there's universal agreement. I think David Katz, who directs the True Health Initiative, where he's brought together all these differently oriented experts who really have a difference of opinions and really tried. And I love the concept of the True Health Initiative, because it's really bringing together folks with different perspectives. And when you do that, when you bring people together with different perspectives, there's common ground. So I think we can start there. Like, we know that fruits and vegetables and whole grain, and then there are, you know, differences. Like Dr. Esselstyn, who there's no room for any animal sources or oil, and there's a lot of support and evidence that he speaks to. And then, as you said, there are other physicians that allow for or believe that, you know, dairy and now, you know, even the dairy topic. I think this year in the New England Journal of Medicine, we had a wonderful paper, a review that was published, again, in the New England Journal of Medicine, right, the gold standard, entitled Milk and Health. And if you haven't seen that paper, I highly recommend it. I have it. If you don't have it, I'm happy to share it. But essentially, it summarized, you know, all these myths about dairy, you know, and we grew up with these, right? Like, even as little kids, drink your milk, you need the calcium to strengthen your bones, right? And we know now that people who drink the most milk are more likely to have, you know, osteoporosis,
right, and fractures. Yeah.
So, I mean, and kudos to the New England Journal of Medicine for publishing this. I mean, the truth, there it is in front of you. So, I mean, even those doctors that are saying that dairy is an important part of your diet in order to get enough calcium, you know, that's just silly. I mean,
it's become an old debunked concept.
Even the New England Journal of Medicine is saying so.
Right.
Not just Dr. Esselstyn. There you go.
Right.
So, I mean, the truth is that I think a lot of physicians aren't comfortable with this just simply because they didn't hear it in medical school by their professors who they value. Right.
Right.
Think about it. When I went to medical school, I had a couple of professors or attending physicians that I looked up to, that I so admired, that I'm like, oh, I want to be like them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you go to medical school and
it's a good thing we practice lifestyle medicine, Saray.
Right.
Lots of meditating going on here.
So, yeah.
Saray, I want to talk really about your documentary. Like, how did that come about? That is just amazing.
Yeah, I think, well, as I mentioned, in 2012, I decided that I was going to leave behind infectious diseases because I really wanted to focus on this idea of bringing lifestyle medicine to the masses. And within it, as I thought through, like, how do I reach more and more people, you know, beyond doing public speaking and writing articles, I saw an opportunity with a documentary. And so we brought together a wonderful team of women, and we brainstormed, and we decided that we were going to create something that could, you know, bring light to this idea that we don't learn this in medical school. And for me, you know, I think I'm so grateful that I am where I am today, feeling so well and free of medication. But wow, I wondered what I could do to assure moving forward that, you know, if someone is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis or any other chronic disease, that their doctor could offer them this advice. I mean, for 8 years, I suffered.
Yes.
And I wonder, could I have been prevented? Could I have prevented that suffering had I known very early on about this? So that's my hope. My hope is that, you know, the community, at large will see the film and be inspired to create change in their own life. But it's also important for me that the film will serve to create a movement within our peers, not only in the United States, because I often speak to the United States and the statistics here, but this is a universal global concern. We want all doctors, all healthcare professionals, nurses, anybody who's in part of that realm, that they should all be speaking to this universally and ubiquitously.
Right.
Or even our healthcare settings should speak to the importance of lifestyle. I mean, our food in cafeterias and the food that we serve our patients that are there healing and recovering from whatever reason brought them into the hospital, they should be eating healthy, plant-based, nourishing foods. And instead we're seeing, heart disease patients served bacon and eggs the day after open heart surgery. That happening today in 2020.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's mind-blowing. In our cafeteria, I talk about this all the time. In our cafeteria, in our medical school, that is the same cafeteria that feeds University Hospital, which is the hospital that we're affiliated with, there's a Burger King inside of the four walls of the hospital.
Unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. And no one thinks it's unusual or irregular. I mean, we just went in University Hospital in Newark. I see so many, there's been a tremendous, concern with the pandemic, and so many patients have died, and the hospital was just overrun with COVID-19 patients. And there's a Burger King inside of that hospital, and no one talks about it. And what have we learned about COVID-19?
Right. It's the ones with the chronic illnesses.
Right. Who are most likely to be hospitalized or die. Beyond the elderly, it's heart disease, it's obesity, it's diabetes, it's hypertension, it's COPD. These are the patients that are succumbing to this acute infectious disease.
Right.
And so we are, if you would, we are a poorly prepared country, globe, really, because it's not just the United States, to accept this acute novel infectious agent. It's doing so much damage, largely because of the bedrock or the baseline of chronic disease that is the global epidemic that we are experiencing today.
Exactly. So, Saray, how are you? What are your sort of your day-to-day kind of stuff that you're doing? So you see people in private practice. What exactly are you working on in terms of lifestyle medicine and making it like your mission?
Well, I mean, I have my private practice, which I said to you, I started in 2012, and it was very early on. There weren't many lifestyle medicine like practicing physicians. And so at first it was just educating people on what lifestyle medicine was, because most people didn't know what it was. And little by little, the practice grew, and it's been an extraordinary journey for me, because to see patients, come in morbidly obese, diabetic, or poorly controlled hypertensives, or even MS patients. I see a lot of MS patients because they know my story. And to see particularly, MS is a disease that largely affects young women, and to see young women sort of taking back the reins of their health and really, and in the film, there is a young woman named Kelly who was featured in the film, and just to see, she's a great example, because when she came to see me, I guess almost 3 years ago, initially she was newly diagnosed with MS, but she was also 90 pounds overweight. She was pre-diabetic and hypertensive. And I said to her, I know you're here about your MS and you're sad about your MS, but what about this other stuff? It had been completely ignored. And so the good news is that her lifestyle change has afforded her a reversal of prediabetes, a reversal of hypertension. I lost you again.
We persist.
So, it's the lifestyle medicine practice has been a beautiful experience, because it's witnessing people come in with all of this chronic disease baggage, and then to see them on the other end of it, and it's infectious. You showed up because not only do they get better, but everyone around them with
Yes, the community, their families.
family and their community. And Kelly's a great example because she, she's been so instrumental in changing folks in her family and her community. She had a screening in Middletown, New York, from where she's from, and shared the film there, and we had a nice Q&A, and she's just glowing, is just a beacon of joy, and she wants to share this with as many people as possible, and that's what I think is really
what a way for the movement to spread, right? Because I think, we're so used to seeing like major change happen sometimes from maybe, a law that changed or something like that. But I think what's really happening with the whole plant-based and the lifestyle medicine movement is patients are tired of taking 15 drugs a day. They're going to their doctors and saying, isn't there a better way to do this? And they're getting on the, online, and they're listening or hearing stories about maybe their neighbor or a family member who was able to turn things around. And so it is kind of like a fire that's slowly spreading. It's almost like a groundswell movement.
Yes.
And like I said, just in the last 3 years, I've never even heard of the term plant-based before 3 years ago. And I'm an internist. Like, this is what I did for a living for 16 years.
I know.
It was horrible. When I was like angry, I was frustrated. I was like, how was this not part of our education, right? Like, it's just so mind-blowing. And seeing the results and seeing all the data. And I've been to 6 plant-based conferences since then, and it's just like, reinforced it. And of course, do we get it in our own lives? And like you said, I think some of it is, I don't know if cognitive dissonance is the right term to use, but some of the reluctance I see among physician colleagues is because it's bringing up their own sort of, I might have to change my lifestyle in order to be able to.
I agree. I think that's part of it. I think there's a lot of factors, but that's certainly part of it. But, as I said, no shaming or or we did this wrong. I think like I said before, when we know better, we do better. So
we do better.
We're going to move forward with love and compassion, and we want to bring our colleagues into the circles. I mean, I would want the American College of Lifestyle Medicine conference and conferences like that to be just full house. I wanted to do every year. I remember the first year I went was in 2012, and it was probably a couple hundred, physicians in the room, and our last ACLM, I think, were a couple thousand, right? So there's extraordinary growth because people, and even when you go to these conferences,
they're great.
You feel happy, right? Everybody's happy.
It is so much fun. I mean, seriously, after that, I was like, I'm never going to another hospitalist or internist conference again.
I think about all the conferences I used to go to, right? Like internal medicine conferences and the Infectious Disease Society of America, or the American, the hepatology conferences, because I did a lot of work in hepatitis, and I never felt joyful at these lectures. Everyone, and we run together, we eat plant-based food together, we practice what we preach.
Yes.
And then you get together with these people, and they're all doing something extraordinary in their part of the world. And it's people from all over the world. I mean, it's the American College of Medicine, but we get people from everywhere. And you leave there and you're like inspired. You're like,
right.
And you learn from each other. And that's been, and then, this year for me, 2019, has been working on, writing this book. And that was something that I had never done before. It was a gargantuan, a Herculean effort to get this done. But, I have an amazing publisher, Hierophant Publishing. The president there, Randy Davila, is a godsend. He approached me last year and about writing a book, and I looked at him like, I don't know how to do that.
That's why kudos to you, my goodness.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the book, and the book's title, "What's Missing in Medicine," I think is just sort of summarizes everything I'm about, right? I mean, because I see, the medical education, the curriculum as this big, envision this puzzle, and you have this jigsaw puzzle, and you have all these pieces, and then we have these missing pieces in the middle of our education. So we're getting an incomplete picture.
Right.
We're graduating from medical school, and we're being sent out into the world to take care of patients, but we're missing parts.
Right,
You know,
right, absolutely. Some
our
critical parts too at that.
but our toolbox is incomplete, and we're being asked to take care of patients in the midst of a chronic disease epidemic,
Right.
and we don't have the tools to really do that.
I know.
So
Well, I think the one thing about COVID, I have to say, because I'm always, the silver lining kind of gal, is because almost all of these conferences now are virtual. There's really probably no reason to limit. Like, I mean, these conferences were getting sold out.
yes,
You
yes.
know, and so I'm hoping the bandwidth is adequate to even have 4,000 people if they need to. I just don't know if technology can't keep up, like we're just seeing here today. That might be a problem. But so I just created a study group. We're all going to sit for our boards in November. So we have about 130 members. I'm like, let's start, do a study group and that. So, and I think, that was one of the main reasons I started this speaker series too, because it's like, it's one thing to do the one-on-one patient care. And like you said, it's not just the patient who's affected, but everybody around them. But then as physicians, if we can bring more and more physicians on board, show them the study, show them the data, show them that their lives can be better too by doing some of these things, right? Like you said, you touched upon burnout, and the satisfaction you get from practicing medicine this way, because when you talked about your patients' lives changing, like your face lit up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're trying to bring back into medicine, the joy of practicing medicine.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I mean, because think about it. It's of course it's a great privilege and honor to care for a patient and to have that relationship one-on-one with the patient. But when you can reach a physician and offer them this education, not only to improve the quality of their personal quality of life, but when they change the way they practice, the way they approach medicine, then that's extraordinary. I have I also often mention this. I have about 40 something patients in my practice who are also doctors, and they became my patient because at one point we had a patient in common, a poorly controlled diabetic that I was helping to reverse their diabetes. And now I see their endocrinologist who came to me, who initially came to me because she was obese and she herself was pre-diabetic. And she's now no longer pre-diabetic. She's lost 50 pounds. And she has, she's a big advocate for plant-based lifestyle medicine,
Amazing.
Even though she had been practicing for nearly 22 years, she's shifted everything in her office, the way she approaches diabetic patients. So that to me is, wow, not only did I help her, but I'm indirectly serving her patient population in some way. And that brings me so much joy.
Oh, it's amazing.
And we're all doing that, as we speak to this and this Facebook group that you have, you're reaching people and that you may not even know, that maybe you just planted a seed in some, I don't know, some radiologist that lives out in Iowa that really isn't very interested in it, but for the first time just heard lifestyle medicine and plant-based and maybe didn't listen to the entire clip, but maybe 4 months down the line, we'll hear it again. And then this time we'll search it out and want to learn more about it. And all of a sudden you put them on that path. And I think that's beautiful.
I think you made a really good point, because sometimes we tend to feel like, who am I to speak to this? There's the Dr. Esselsteins and the Gregors and the, all these people, Ornish of the world. But you're right, like to amplify our voice, to really own what we believe in, whatever it might be, whether it's about lifestyle medicine or anything else. And, especially I think women, we tend to have a lot of like the imposter syndrome and, this feeling of pulling back. And I think it's great that we just keep talking about this. And like you said, in a nice way, inviting people to just consider this possibility, just a different way of looking at things. And then they learn, as physicians, we know where to go find the data. We know how to look at studies.
I also think, and I always make this point too, I think it's relevant that our colleagues who maybe are not yet familiar with lifestyle medicine, that they understand that we are not alternative medicine, holistic, contrarian to or against mainstream medicine. We're not.
Right.
We're not about, potions and supplements or none of that. What we're talking about is listen, we need to bring awareness to the value of preventive measures of, these all important lifestyle behaviors, because they play such an important role in human health. And that's the piece that's missing. That doesn't mean that we're against medicine or that there isn't a role. I mean, I'm an infectious disease physician. Where would we be? Again, without antibiotics, or the example that I cited at the beginning of this, HIV, where it was the development of those medicines that have led to a disease that was once a death sentence to once that is a chronic disease. Hepatitis C, when I was a young infectious disease attending, our cure rates with interferon and ribavirin, which was the standard of care, was like 10%, and it was terrible. The side effects of this
horrible.
Today, the development of the new treatments for hepatitis C, we're curing 90% plus. So that's amazing. I mean, all the advances that we have in healthcare are extraordinary, and we're not trying to diminish them in any way in lifestyle.
Absolutely.
We want to enhance them. But if we do that and we don't address this, then we are missing a huge opportunity to save so many lives.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's that whole root cause, treating the root cause and, almost pre-prevention, when people talk about getting screened for, breast cancer or colon cancer and all that, that's not prevention, because the disease is already there. Or you assume the disease is there and you're trying to find it.
Right. That's called secondary prevention or protection, right? And that's one of my pet peeves when I see articles on prevention. Or when I took preventive medicine, there was a course in medical school called preventive medicine. Of course, they never talked about food. They talked about what you just said, right? Mammography for breast cancer, colonoscopies for colon cancer, which of course are important, but that's not prevention. That's early detection or secondary prevention. I'm talking about primary prevention. Let's prevent that breast cancer from seeding or even beginning. That's
right. One of the things that comes up in the group I've seen is, but I'm a specialist. I don't know how I could incorporate lifestyle medicine. I know the answer to that, but I wanted your thoughts on that. I've had dermatologists, I've had radiologists, well, not radiologists so much, but mostly people who still are doing patient care, but maybe not primary care, not family practice or internal medicine.
Yeah, at the end of the day, all of those people that you just mentioned, they have an MD at the end of their name, right? So there's a responsibility there. And you can incorporate and again, I'm not asking a plastic surgeon to counsel a patient, for 45 minutes on diet. But certainly a plastic surgeon who is maybe doing surgery on somebody who wants a tummy tuck, there may be an opportunity for them to discuss or introduce some ideas. Like, they could give them some literature to read about this. They can talk to them about the importance of a fiber-rich diet and the value in that. They could offer them a book to read, like What's Missing in Medicine by Dr. Stancic.
Definitely.
Or I'm kidding, but you know what I'm saying. There's so many books. Any of Dr. Ornish's books, any of Dr. Greger's. I mean, there's Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Barnard. I mean, we have so many shoulders on which we stand, right? So many powerhouses. There's evidence. I mean, the point that I'm trying to make is that even though they may not practice this openly, they don't have lifestyle medicine on their shingle, that they have this foundation so that if the question comes up or there's an opportunity to drop something, they're equipped to do it. And they can have power professionals in their practice, right? Maybe the internist or the surgeon doesn't have the time to go into this in detail, but part of their team should be a registered dietitian, right? Yeah. Should be a physical therapist, should be an exercise physiologist, should be a therapist to talk to patients about stress management. So, I mean, I think we can, and that's, I think, important. The future of lifestyle medicine should be a multidisciplinary team, right?
Absolutely.
We're working with a team of individuals to deliver the optimal care. And I would love to see models like that perpetuate in clinical medicine, where we have centers, wellness centers that incorporate all of this, or that they can be, built into or integrated into hospital settings. Something as simple as bringing plant-based options or primarily plant-based foods to the cafeteria.
Yeah, just something that simple.
That's simple. And assuring that the foods that the patients are receiving, it wasn't until 1993, believe it or not, which was the year I graduated from medical school, that smoking was banned from.
Wow, 1993.
It was in the 1960s that our Surgeon General produced the first report that clearly told all healthcare professionals, physicians, that smoking was destroying lives, was contributing to heart disease and contributing to lung cancer. I mean, we knew in the 1960s. It took us in medicine almost 30 years to get it out of our hospital.
That is crazy.
30 years, right?
Unbelievable.
That's where we are with food today, right?
Yeah.
Food, the French fries and the cheeseburger that is now being served right now at University Hospital is the cigarette of the 1980s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need more and more people to be outraged. So if you went into the hospital today and somebody lit a cigarette, people would storm to that person. They would, you cannot light a cigarette. You're in the hospital. That's crazy. But
absolutely.
30 years ago, it was fine to do that, right? So we need to get to a point that enough people in the hospital now, if they see somebody eating onion rings, deep fried onion rings that people go, you can't do that. This is a building where people are here to get better. It's all about health and well-being. You cannot do that here. And
I think you bring up a really great point, Saray, because people have this idea of, well, lifestyle medicine, and this is sort of like a box, but it isn't. It's wherever we have an opportunity to talk about it and model it. It might be at the dinner table with you, at Thanksgiving. I don't know. I'm just saying, and it's like, there's always, there's opportunities in our day-to-day life, whether we're physicians or not, to, in a very kind, gentle way, talk about it, and kind, gentle way say, I've looked at the data and as physicians, we still carry a lot of, and people look up to us, even our own friends and family, and you say, look, I've looked at the data, like this is what's happening. This is why we're having these rates of diabetes go up. And, this is what I see happen to my diabetic patients in the hospital on dialysis. I mean, their life is terrible. And so you don't have to have, like you said, you don't have to have a formal practice. Or you don't have to be doing primary care. Almost every opportunity that you can find to talk about it is worth talking about it.
Absolutely. And I think it's our responsibility.
Yes.
To correct course and to do, as I said, I say this all the time. We got to do better when we know better. And that's really the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, Saray, do you have any parting words? Oh my God, with all this stuff, I'm so sorry we weren't able to get any audience participation. I don't know what happened with the technology today.
Well, it's okay. I mean, hopefully people can watch it later, and then maybe we can do it again another day. But I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for being, a shining light out there in California. That's where you are, right, in California?
I'm actually in the Pacific Northwest right now, but I live in Hawaii.
Oh my God, I want to move with you.
Everybody does. I think I just want all my lifestyle medicine docs on board with me on Big Island. You would kill there for the fruits and vegetables. Like we're going into mango season right now. And I have never seen bigger avocados in my life. I mean, there was one that was like 6 or 7 pounds. I think it may have made it into the Guinness Book of Records. You won't starve on the Big Island.
That sounds amazing. Well, hopefully, I mean, that's where my plan to retire is. So
let me know.
We'll go for walks in the morning.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think the good news is that our movement is growing. There's beautiful people like you all over the country. So I see it as when I look at the map of our country, I see all these little lights lighting up across the geography of it, and the lights are getting brighter and brighter, and we're coalescing.
Yes.
So I think that this movement is very, very powerful. And I think in 10, 20 years from now, the world is going to be very different in a positive way. And so I'm excited for the future of medicine, and I'm excited for my medical students and who will be leaders in the next decade or two. So I think there's a lot of wonderful things. I hope my film reaches a lot of people and serves to inspire and serves to create change. I hope my book, which I've put my heart and soul into, does well and serves not only community, but serves to inspire other young physicians who want to pursue a career in medicine, and hopefully that their experience through training will be much different than ours.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be joyful. I want them to sleep and eat and exercise during their medical school training, and I want them to be happy, because happy, joyful physicians are just more effective. And
totally.
Yeah, so we can do that. We just need to, build some new principles and build some new approaches. And you made a good point before about women. Sometimes we are reluctant to speak up, and I think that now's the time for us to speak up. And to make our voices heard and to share our perspective, because sometimes we see the world a little bit differently, and we might have some insight that our male colleagues may not have. And so, and it's not really about men, women, or
no.
It's about all of us coming together with love and respect.
I guess overcoming our sort of inhibitions to some extent, and we all do have that. I mean, we all get stage fright. We all don't like to do public speaking. We have that. But when the message is so important to get out there, I think we just have to just show up.
Show up. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Show up and share. I mean, your energy, your passion is palpable. I can feel it all the way here. So, share that with as many people as possible. And it could be just, even a small group on Facebook, or it could be a small group in your local town at the library where you give a little talk on lifestyle medicine. It could be, going to the farmer's market and talking to someone there about who you are and what you do. And because the farmer's market would attract people that are interested in health. And so every little bit that we can all do to get the word out about this idea of lifestyle medicine, I think, is going to be wonderful and
change the world. Well, you are such an inspiration, Saray. I really have to say. I mean, you've come from being, you were literally on the other side. You've seen what it is to be a patient within our healthcare system when, there wasn't too many great options. And then you took that upon yourself. You really labored through, you persisted. I really admire you. You're one of my heroes.
Thank
I mean,
you.
And now you're doing such great work, like spreading the word and spreading the movement. So I feel very positive about the future of our world. I think we've really come to that tipping point now. So thank you so much. Yeah.
You're very welcome. And I'm glad that this technology held out for the last few minutes.
I'm going to try to maybe edit out some of those pieces that we dropped, because I can edit it on YouTube, and then we'll put it on the Facebook groups. But maybe we'll try to do this again, like in a couple months or something, when you can get more attraction to this, and then we can talk a little bit more about your book. I'd love to hear more about that as well.
That would be amazing. Yeah. And watch the film so that next time we can talk more
tonight. I have it. I just haven't gotten to it. I watched bits and pieces, but I'm trying to juggle too many things, but I plan to do it tonight. Thank you, Saray. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right. Bye.